Well, I would not start with the question. I would start with the intent behind the question. But if their intent is misaligned or you haven't read the context or the room, that question might not be very powerful at all because the difference is profound. I could ask the exact same question and one would use the person and one would uplift the person. When you ask a powerful question, you actually give the power to somebody else to speak their truth, to make a piece of their world known. And so there's all this talk about psychological safety and belonging and connection and trust. A powerful question gives someone the opportunity to be known and belong. It's really hard to belong if nobody knows anything about you. And so I think as facilitators, one of our jobs is to ask others and to invite others to ask each other in the rooms that we're in, invite folks to ask each other questions that they otherwise would not have, to kind of teleport them into good conversations that they're really glad they had, but they never would have if they weren't in the room.
Welcome to another day, another workshop. Today we have the pleasure of welcoming Chad Littlefield. He's the co-founder and chief experience officer of We and Me, an organization on a mission to make connection easy for leaders, educators, and events. Forbes even called Chad the global expert on asking questions that build team trust and connection. He's a TEDx speaker, a best-selling author, and I'm not done yet because he's also the creator of the Connection Toolkit, which is being used in organizations across more than 80 countries to spark conversations that really matter. Without further ado, let's welcome Chad.
Good to be with you, my friend. Hello. Woo! Yeah, everybody in their car on their commute listening to the podcast I'm sure is cheering, right?
Finally,
this is one of the
Chad
reasons I like
is in the
podcasts,
bug.
though. There is a gift that podcasts offer, I think, is actually the experience of like being a fly on the wall, where there doesn't need to be a lot of hype. Like you and I are just having a private conversation, and then you're just doing some things behind the scenes to let everybody into that. And that's a gift. I think that's it's a very genuine format of content sharing. I'm a fan. Looking forward to our conversation.
Me too, man. And I think genuine is really the right word, because before being a podcast host, I'm a podcast fan. Love like when I'm driving, like when I'm doing other things. And as parents, we have less time. So those moments when I'm doing the course, I can like have a little pleasure for myself and listen to Chad on another show, for example. So Chad, I've done this presentation, but I want to hear it from you. Like, tell me who's Chad?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just moved to a new city, and so I'm getting the fresh barrage of what do you do questions. And for any facilitator, consultant, coach, speaker, trainer kind of person that might be listening to this, right? This is like a nightmare question for most of us because, my wife just says, I am a nurse. I am a nurse. 4 words. And then she's done. Everybody's got it, like clear. And I'm like, at the lake with somebody going for a swim. And they're like, what do you do? It's like, well, I created this card deck and it's used in schools. So what I've learned is contextual answers are important. I know who's listening right now, and I know who you are. And so what I'll offer is that for the last 10 years, I've run a facilitation and speaking practice with a series of facilitation tools that I've created, card decks and toolkits and whatnot, that kind of genuinely by accident took off. So 12 years ago, I created this first deck, of We Connect cards. And it's just a deck of 60 questions. There's actions on the back. And I created them for a group of people that I was facilitating. I was leading adventure trips at the time, 12 years ago. I was in grad school leading adventure trips for teenagers. And the first half day of that week was get together and connect. And watching 2 teenagers connect was just too painful for me to continue observing. And so I just asked myself, like, what could I create or design that could just stick in between those 2 people and help that go better? And so I created one deck for myself 12 years ago. And then after a couple of weeks of using it, somebody said, oh, those are really cool. Like, where can I get those? You can't. This is the only one. I printed this one for me. But it was kind of this clue of like, oh, maybe these would become a thing. And so 11 years ago or so, I launched them on Kickstarter, and now they're used in 100,000 different facilitators' hands and organizations and schools. And I continue to get pictures every single day of somebody using these cards in context, like, an oil company in Saudi Arabia and a campfire on a hike in northern Maine in the US. It's like just the amount of context and where they've gone. So to make a long story longer, for the last 10 years, I've run a speaking and facilitation practice. So I've gone around and done 98% private engagements with conferences, organizations, and largely universities as well. for the next 10 years and where I've kind of transitioned is hosting my own stuff. The list has grown to a point where there's enough people reading the book, Ask Powerful Questions. There's enough people using the cards. There's enough people subscribe to the newsletter that if I say, there's enough people watching the YouTube channel that if I say, hey, I want to host a party, we're going to make sure the party's transformational. Want to come? That people turn up. And so right now, my main focus is this Connectors Summit. So I put on the summit as a test last year to bring people together. And it's been an absolute blast. And so I'm putting kind of quadrupling down on hosting events that are like AI content free, not meaning we don't use AI, but it's like, I think the power of events and gatherings right now is that you can't pretend at events. You can't pretend a workshop. It's like real people having a real conversation or exchanging a challenge with each other, an idea. And there's no question of like veracity to it. So yeah, that's a messy facilitator answer for you.
I love
when
that.
my neighbor asks me, I just say I'm an entrepreneur. And then if they're curious, they can ask more.
Because you don't have 2 hours to spend explaining what is a facilitator.
Right. Right.
Okay, I love the way you said like, yeah, 2 teenagers trying to connect was hardful to do. So I guess if your cards worked on teenagers, now they can work on anyone.
This was the test. I actually, because I was in grad school when I created them, I ended up publishing an academic paper on the creation of We Connect cards, and we tested them with teenagers, with a tech company, with a bunch of introverted engineers, and then another like an environmental center. But I specifically chose those first 2 contexts because I was like, if they work there, they'll work in most anywhere else, because those are some of the like more tricky, awkward, connection resistant contexts. And so I actually, with the tech company and the teenagers, you'll appreciate this, just kind of related to questions. And for anybody who's developing their own tools, you'll appreciate this method. I just use this traffic light method. I literally set out a green, yellow, and red piece of construction paper, and I put out all the cards down, and I said, just get together in small groups of 3 or 4. I gave each small group a deck and said, just sort all the cards into, wow, this is a really good question, green. Could be a good question, but it needs some tweaking, yellow. Red, please do not ask me this question. It makes me want to quit my job. Drop it there. And we continue doing that over and over and over again until the vast majority of cards were in the green. There were a few in the yellow, and you can't please everybody. So there was always 1 or 2 in the red. Yeah.
Nice. Like, you got me curious. Is there a question like that were killing it, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, and now that are becoming like, are shifting?
No, I think part of that review process and like weeding out the questions that didn't like what was left, and this is actually interesting, so an accidental discovery of the deck is that you can add context to the end of every single question, and it personalizes the entire deck. So you could say at home, and all of a sudden the question, what is life teaching you, becomes what is life teaching you at home. And so that's true for all 60 questions. And I don't think I know that's not true for all questions. So I think there's something about like, we kind of winnowed it down to the place where the questions invite people to speak their own truth. They don't have to puff up and pretend. And they are pretty specific, but general enough that you can add context. And because you can add context, it means you can answer with many, many different answers. Whereas a question like, where are you from? There are a couple places on Earth that you can answer, and then you're done. It's a closed question, in other words. And so these questions, each question, you could go through the deck with your wife, Mehdi, every single year for the rest of your marriage, and you would have different answers nearly every year. And I think there's something that's important about realizing that, as a question, I had a mentor that used to say the best way to kill a question is with an answer, right? And so I think the deck is filled with questions that could be answered and re-answered lots of different times.
Love that. Since we are talking about connection, like, when do we need to create a real connection? Like, I know you always say that you hate like chit chat, like it kills like real connection. It's a waste of time. Like, how do we create real connection by asking questions then?
Well, I would not start with the question. I would start with the intent behind the question. So I could give you a list. In fact, I could give you a box filled with a bunch of, quote, powerful questions. But if the intent is misaligned, or you haven't read the context or the room well, that question might not be very powerful at all. And so for me, step number one is get extremely clear on your intent for why you're even going to ask that question in the first place. And I think intent is a beautiful tool, sharing intent as a way of seeking someone's consent. Hey, I noticed this in your background, Mehdi. You've got something that's like an action figure that's glowing, and I'm super curious about that. I'd love to ask about that. Can I ask you a question about it?
Yeah, sure.
That's overdone there, right? But I've shared my intent. Just one of the most basic and universal intentions is genuine curiosity, if it's genuine. So if you're naturally genuinely curious about something, you're like, oh, this is so cool. Like, tell me more about this. People, natural curiosity can be relatively disarming. When it gets messy is, in some languages, the word curiosity also translates as nosy. And so when I'm getting nosy and I'm like, it starts to turn from, hey, my intent is to be curious and to build a relationship with you and learn more about who you are in the world because I want to get to know you. That's a beautiful and pure intent. But if I want to mine information from you and get data and like harvest your brain and then leave, this intent does not feel so communicative or other-centered. And so walls are going to start to go up in that moment. Yeah, so the first thing, like, I need to check myself. If I'm trying to ask a powerful question to a waiter or waitress at a restaurant, am I trying to look charismatic in front of my friends, or do I care about that waiter or waitress? Because the difference is profound. I could ask the exact same question, and one would use the person, and one would uplift the person.
Yeah.
Whoa.
You know, like when you were explaining that to me. When you were explaining it to me, I could see conversation that I had with people, and some were just making sure that the conversation goes on, and others were really interested in the answers and trying to deeply engage. So I think you beautifully put it together too. And I understand the need of having this intent.
So I don't know if I fully answered your question, but this is where I'm landing here. Like, if you want to ask a powerful question, first, like, get so deeply aligned that the question you're going to ask, an underlying intention is that it is to actually benefit the other. The reason when Will and I wrote Ask Powerful Questions, we didn't call it Ask Awesome Questions or Ask Great Questions or Ask Super Questions. It was Ask Powerful Questions. And the reason that word power is not because the question is big and mighty, but when you ask a powerful question, you actually give the power to somebody else to speak their truth, to make a piece of their world known. And so there's all this talk about psychological safety and belonging and connection and trust. A powerful question gives someone the opportunity or the choice and the power to be known and be connected and belong. It's really hard to belong if nobody knows anything about you. And so if you retain all of yourself inside, good luck belonging, right? And so I think as facilitators, one of our jobs is to ask others and to invite others to ask each other in the rooms that we're in. Invite folks to ask each other questions that they otherwise would not have, to kind of teleport them into good conversations that they're really glad they had, but they never would have if they weren't in the room.
And so it reminds me of this situation and how I discovered you. So there was this LinkedIn post that I made talking about Icebreaker. It was a long time ago. And seeing that I saw after COVID, like the need of having those connection moments, even if the prompt may sound like seem cringe or like a bit stupid. And you were like commenting and telling me like, yeah, but this connection activity need to have a link with the workshop purpose. Yeah. How do you articulate this? And
I've never refound this article, so I don't even know if it exists, but I have a vague memory of coming across an article that in my mind now is like the best title for an article ever, which is Icebreakers Suck and Everybody Hates Them, ... but they work. And so the idea of like, I used to care a ton whether people right at the very beginning liked what I was about to do. Now I'm very intentional with how I frame things, and I'm very good at uncrossing people's arms and disarming people and warming people up to connection. But I am totally unconcerned what they think before they've had the conversation, before they've connected with someone. I'm very interested in what they think afterward, but I'm wanting to lead a conversation that actually works. So to your point, does it need, or to your question, like, does an icebreaker need to connect to purpose? It's one of the reasons that I'm one of my secret missions in life is to gently eradicate the word icebreaker from facilitators' mouths. And this isn't just a transformation of how we talk or language, but it's actually get rid of the word icebreaker and replace it with connection before content. And the distinguishing factor for me of connection before content is that it allows people to connect to each other, but it also does connect to the purpose of why you're there. So when I've seen people, a group of senior executives get together in a room and say, go around and share something that you did this weekend, but they're there to talk about like a huge strategic decision to rebrand the company. It's like what you did this weekend is entirely unrelated to that. It might help you connect, but not in a purposeful way. And so I'm wanting to change that question to, hey, there's some people in the room who don't know each other. It's really important that we know each other so that we can move quickly and not slowly. Right. So you see, just even as I'm starting, like the framing of this is all very much, guys, we're like elevating the importance of this rather than saying, oh, we're just going to do a quick icebreaker before we get started. It's like, no. Connection before content, you're already in it. And so the question I want to ask that group of senior executives might be, so we're here to talk about this big rebrand. What is a change currently happening in your own life? And how's it going? And the reason I'm asking that question is we're about to talk about this big change. And I'm going to ask you afterward, what similarities or what connections can you draw between what you're experiencing, the change you're experiencing, and what we're about to do here today? So in other words, the connection of purpose can happen in the debrief of that connection as well.
Yeah, and also like the perspective is super interesting, and it's like you're warming them up, and it's actually how I call icebreakers today. I just call this a warm up to avoid like seeing those faces like, oh no, even if I don't care because now we know it works and it's gonna be fine afterwards. It's just like I don't want to create even this doubt of like, oh, this is going to suck. But I love that because then you're warming them up to be ready to answer the question that would have been a bit overwhelming in the beginning of like, how do you feel about this big change coming?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And in fact, purpose, I haven't articulated it like this before, but purpose is a pathway or like a shortcut to get to more meaningful conversation. So I'm leveraging the purpose of we're here to talk about a big rebrand. So I have a perfect excuse to talk about changes that are happening in your life. I have a perfect reason or a link. It's kind of like when Will and I would teach students, we taught a college facilitation course together in the US at Penn State. And Will Wise, by the way, is my late co-founder, passed away a few years ago. We co-wrote Ask Powerful Questions together and worked together for 10 years. So when we would teach students, I framed it as like the awkward elevator trick. If you're in an elevator with someone and you have nothing about the context of the elevator and what the stranger is wearing, carrying, or sharing, how do you build a relationship of trust? So that's the challenge. If this this is a typically uncomfortable scenario to try to build a connection with a stranger, how would you do it? And what I would highly recommend people do is use and ask about things that are only in the shared context of the room. So they've got a shirt, an AC/DC shirt. You ask them, you ever go to an AC/DC concert? Or they've got an earring with a little piece of beach glass in it. Like, oh, I'm curious what beach that glass came from. It's a psychologically safe way to access something that is potentially very real and important to that person, but psychologically safe because they got dressed in the morning. They knew they were going out in public. And so they made choices of what they put on and around their body to say, this is who I am, and I'm going to go present myself to the world subconsciously, right? But those choices in my mind are fair game. Now, what's not fair game is how'd your nose get to be that shape? Right? Because it's like, these aren't changeable things. So you're asking about things that are editable, that people made choices around, as opposed to hair type, skin color, nose shape, nose size, right? Like things like that.
Chad, I want to go back to this. Like you wrote this book as powerful question. I love like now I got the explanation why powerful and this idea of intent. Is there any other ingredients that you want to have in a powerful question?
Yeah, we could do like the 30-second audiobook synopsis. The too long didn't read. 8 hours compressed into 30 seconds. So we mentioned intent before. This is like ingredient number one. In fact, Will and I wrote the book, and then we gave it to an editor, and they're like, wait. We would teach intent, but for some reason we were like, oh, we don't want to make that the first chapter. We got to just like get right into questions. And then we realized, no. If we get right into questions, it all falls apart. So some super practical elements that any facilitator could pick up are we, for whatever reason, our brains are wired to ask about superlatives. What was the best part of your trip to the US? What was the most interesting thing you saw in Europe? You can soften that quite a bit by just saying, what is one of your favorite experiences from your trip? So you just add the phrase one of, and you take a superlative, and now you open up a loop for many, many potential answers, and you don't put the pressure for like the one most important answer. So this is one. And then from the time we were little, you have little kids, I have little kids. You have a 3-year-old, yeah?
Yeah.
So what question does a 3 to a 5-year-old tend to ask over and over again? Why? Why is the red light red? Why is the grass green? Why is the sky blue? Why are we asking about colors? Why? Right? So one of my favorite tools to teach people is take that question, give it a little kiss, and then throw it in the trash. If your goal is to build psychological safety and build a relationship of trust, cut why questions out of your vocabulary. Because if somebody, this is an ironic example here, but if somebody walked in the room of your workshop late and you said, hello, why are you late? What do they have to do?
Justify themselves.
They got to justify, rationalize, defend. If you're trying to build a relationship of trust with people, you can tell everybody why you're laughing hysterically right now. It'll be a moment. Yeah, you should. This will be a good moment.
Was it a sneaky play? Chad, did you just...
It was not a sneaky play. This is like the example that was stuck in my brain. You got to like rationalize, justify, defend. If I'm trying to build psychological safety and relate to someone, I do not want to set off their fight or flight, rationalize, justify, defend brain. Anymore, I don't think we're often not actually fighting or actually flighting, but we very often in a workshop context have a need to be right. And I think that's our amygdala is like filling in space of like, okay, I'm not literally fighting, but I am fighting in the way that I need to be right. I need to assert my awesomeness here. And that is very poisonous to any group dynamic. Why questions don't completely eliminate that, or cutting out why questions doesn't completely eliminate that, but it helps get rid of that a bit. All right. You want to tell us why you were laughing?
Yeah, I will tell you that my brain now is processing this why story. So I'm laughing because I was totally late. I totally forgot about this podcast episode. I was sure it was tomorrow. So I'm 1 month with my kid, no work, meaning I don't have, like, for me, every day is Sunday at the moment.
Yeah.
So I was sure the 27th would be tomorrow. And then I received this message of Chad. I was like, oh no. And the funny thing is that I was saying to my wife, like, tomorrow I have this podcast with this guy. Like, he's brilliant. He's a best-selling author. Like, I don't want to miss that. I need to prepare well. And then I received that message and I was like, oh no. And the sneaky thing that Chad did to me is he sent me a message like, take your time, but please don't apologize. And then I just came in. I was like, I didn't know what to say. And then I was, so that's why
the request was, the message I sent, right, was, you're good. We're good. Please don't apologize. Let's just be present with each other. I would so much rather, right, build this conversation and our relationship on the basis of presence and kindness and connection rather than from a place of deficit or apology, which is what a why question can subtly put someone into. It puts them in a place because you don't feel good when you show up and you're like, oh, sorry. That does not feel good. I've missed meetings before. Feels like crap. Right?
No, and honestly, side note, and I want to share it because like Chad is such a genuine person. Like we were chatting to prepare for this episode and he asked me a question and he said like, what's one thing you would love for me to know about you, your work, and what you're aiming for before we chat? And I've contacted so many different people to have them on my podcast, but this is the first time we asked me such a question. So I really appreciate chatting with you, Chad. And I think it's nice to see someone really practicing what they're preaching. So really feeling lucky to chat with you right now.
I appreciate that. I'm saddened actually to hear that I'm the only person that's hopped on and asked you a question, because I think I had a friend that used to say a conversation without self-disclosure is an interrogation, right? It's like if you're only
Oh,
asking questions of someone, but I don't know what the reverse is. What is a lecture, right? A conversation where there are no questions is just a lecture. And there is this dynamic, right, with podcasts where like, I'm even in it now a little bit, right? My intent is to add value to anybody that's listening. I'm talking probably slightly differently than if you were just in my living room, right? I'm like presenting ideas in some ways. But I still think maintaining sight that we are in relationship and connection, and that has to come from a place that my intent coming on here was not to do connection with you. It was to be connected. And I think I have a mentor, Matt Church, based out of Australia. He wrote a beautiful book if you're looking to build your facilitation practice called Thought Leaders Practice. It's maybe the best book that I've ever read on like the behind the scenes of running a successful facilitation and speaking practice. And it very much elevated my, I read this book and I thought if I could just make $200K a year working for myself, that's it. That's like the cream of the crop. That's amazing. And then I read this book and he's like, no. Like we're talking like invoice $720 a year, but work with people you love and, get that past $1 million for sure with a 1-person business. And I'm like, what? This is it. So 10, 12 years ago, really raised a ceiling for me. Anyway, Matt often says state matters more than script.
yeah.
And so this idea of I think what you responded to and you're like, oh, wow, Chad, you really are the person that I've watched on YouTube. And I can feel that you said that within 60 seconds or maybe 30 seconds of us talking. I didn't really do all that much. And I think what you were responding to, it was my intent to be connected with you. And this is very essential because you can learn all the tactics and the activities and the right questions and have the perfect agenda. None of that crap matters unless you're really, really aligned with your audience and your group at a very deep core level, not at a yes, I have empathized with my group. They care about this, but at a deep level of being, not just doing. I can see your wheels turning.
Yeah, because my brain is like, I still need to respond to the why thing, but what you said now is really powerful, and I think it's gold. And I think that's what when you're a beginner facilitator, you're so focused into the process, the techniques, and making sure that everything goes well in terms of organization. And you don't have that mental energy to really connect with, I would say, the people and the topic because you're more behind the scenes and the more experience you go. And I think this is what makes the difference, because why you become more effective, it's because you could see that you care and that you're really connecting to the problem. And then this is where every doors get open. And this is one of the milestones I've seen that I passed. And it was a game changer for my client and for me.
Yeah, I think to the connection to problem, it's very easy to be. I spent the first 3-4 years of running We and Me and my practice of working with clients obsessed with the methodology of my background is in experiential education, experiential learning. And so the contribution method that I teach now is very heavily rooted in let's not sit and get information. It's actually amazing how much this still happens all over the world. The dominant form of gathering is one person talks and everybody else soaks in like sponge. And that is just barely different than an email. And so it's there's always a disconnect for me. But anyway, I was obsessed with the methodology. And then as my practice grew, I started to realize my clients could not care less about that. Facilitators and trainers, we care about that. And it's important actually that we do care about that silently. But if you're trying to grow a commercially clever practice, you need to be fully tapped into this is what you actually care about. So sure, I might be teaching other folks, I'll be leading a session at the Connector Summit on this contribution method. My framing though into that is that the idea is your delivery is by far your most effective form of marketing. I would trade any day. I would trade nailing a workshop and having everybody say that was the best thing I've ever experienced. I've never experienced, and specifically, I've never experienced anything like that. I would take that one successful workshop as a form of marketing over daily posts on LinkedIn for a year. Every single time I'm taking that, because if you're in the right room and you've nailed it, it doesn't even matter if they're not the decision maker. Their spouse is the executive director of this thing, and this person is this thing. And I know many people who run $1 million facilitation practices and don't have a website because they're really, really good at what they do. And so being good at what you do, I don't know, sliding words around here. It's late in the afternoon for me now, but the idea being become more obsessed with the problem than even your client is. And then you just be good at what you're good at. You don't need to tell people about it. You don't need to tell you don't need to teach people the method. You're just like, yes. So I'm going to teach you the contribution method, but really what I'm going to teach you to do is how to turn every engagement into at least 2 more because you lead workshops that are so unique and compelling. That's for me, and that's an honest pitch and a promise where you can't lie to people, but that's a much more intriguing thing for a facilitator or trainer than learning the 5 ingredients and locations for contribution and or like some method, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So we even have business advice in this episode. So
guess so.
So guys, focus on what matters. Delivering good value to your client. Stop posting on on LinkedIn about methodologies and frameworks, but like focus on the basis. I think we were talking about Alex Ramos a couple of minutes ago. I think he would just cry. Based on what you said, but yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. I think it's the minimum, right? This is the minimum of making your business successful, like delivering really good value. But I still think that people need to know, and word of mouth has its limitation. But at the end of the day, you're right; it's the best visit card. Like this, like I had this amazing workshop, honey. This guy Chad, wow. The way he started the thing, I've never experienced something like that. Yeah, I think this would never be beaten. But then use that testimonial somewhere, and then and then we'll lead probably to another thing faster.
Yeah, there's a flywheel of awesomeness, but if I the value of a testimonial on a website versus a head of learning and development telling another head of learning and development at a conference, Mehdi was awesome, is like night and day. The testimony on the website is maybe like a little bit of insurance, but it's barely that for somebody. Whereas a referral is like, yeah, I don't need to watch your stuff. This person said you're good. That's it. I do agree with you that it is like the fundamental basic to run a good business, but it's pretty easily overlooked because there's a lot of other distracting things that you can spend your time on. And you can market to the end of the earth, but if every workshop, that's it, then you're always hunting and gathering, and you don't have, and you never get to the place where you're just taking orders and letting inbound work flow in, right? So for the first several years, as I was refining my own facilitation and style and practice, and I led some crappy workshops for clients, and like I didn't get a call back, like all of that has kind of prepared me for this place now where I know if I go speak somewhere, it could turn into 3 other speaking engagements. Whether I take those, pursue those or not is another question, but that took reps. I don't think I could have ever got there from just doing it once. That said, I do feel like there are some things that you can do. One of the strongest things that a facilitator trainer can do is to not rely on their own presentation awesomeness and their own charisma to get a call back. Rather, it's to create such a good experience for the individual that's in the room. Because if I send out a feedback survey in sessions that I'm leading, even in a keynote, I've never ever talked. So I've spoken with well over 100,000 people in audiences in big theater style rooms, but I have never one single keynote talked more than 50% of those keynotes.
Wow.
Never once. But I get lots of callbacks. And I think the reason is when they send out a feedback survey and they're saying, what did you think of Chad? What they're actually partially rating is themselves and their contribution and what they shared in that session. Because the most of the talking I was doing was framing up and setting them up to be awesome and have amazing conversations they otherwise never would have had. And so that, for me, that's part of facilitation, is turn the rating scale into like, did they have such a good time with each other? You're never going to know what they talked about, but was it so awesome? Did they make a lifelong connection? Because all of a sudden your session is getting like a 10 out of 5 stars on everybody's feedback form.
I love that.
I love watching your face in this conversation. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcast, you really should just go to YouTube and just like, we should just replace your head with a mind blown emoji the whole entire podcast, Mehdi.
I think it's genuine. Like, I think it's also like it's easy to read Mehdi. So I think like you see that I love what you're telling me. I'm learning, I'm processing. It's insightful. And it's also actually a video on Spotify. So
right.
you could see that.
I forgot. Perfect.
Cool. So Chad, like, what I wanted to say is that at the end, it's not about you. It's about them. So definitely agree with that. And it reminds me, like, this year I launched my facilitation business, and I got a lot of big gigs right away, and it's derailed my content creation calendar. And I'm all about consistency. And then I was like, oh, but I'm not doing it. And I said I need to be consistent, and it sucks. And then And I was like, Mehdi, you're creating content to get access to those opportunities. So now you don't want to not deliver because you said that you will be consistent. But still, it was hard for me because I created the habit and I was feeling bad. And, like social media give you this instant gratification. So when you were explaining that, I was like, it just hit me.
Well, this is, so Matt Church, who I mentioned earlier, state matters more than script guy. In the book, Thought Leaders Practice, he talks about folks like you and I should only be doing three things, ideally: thinking, selling, and delivering. Anything else, ideally, we have one or two support staff that are helping take that off our plate. So think, sell, deliver. What you learn is as you move, as your practice matures, and not if, but when your practice gets toward a 7-figure mark, you will learn to do all of those three things at once. They will blend into just one verb: think, sell, deliver, as just one. So for me, even while I'm delivering this podcast and sharing ideas and value, I'm also thinking, so earlier, you didn't even know this. This just happened in the back of my brain. Earlier, I said, I've never articulated this like this. Purpose is a shortcut to purpose, or should be a shortcut to a really great conversation. I'm going to go jot that down, and it's going to end up in a YouTube video somewhere because I'm also thinking and developing IP and ideas as I'm delivering this. And maybe actually, to be totally transparent, more than any other podcast I've done, I've mentioned stuff that I've written or created or run. And so there's actually probably more selling than I would ever typically involve in a podcast. Usually it's a little bit more subtle, but because we're around facilitators and trainers, and I know there's a curiosity of what's the behind the scenes of people's businesses, I'm kind of weaving some of that in there. But do you see how in this moment, thinking, selling, and delivering is all happening simultaneously? And so for you, the content creation, when you're running $1 million practice, your effortless flow is you're going to be delivering a session. And as you're walking out as you're on your way to the airport, you've let go of polished content and you're more just about hyper valuable ideas. And you record a 60-second video with the most useful thing that that you learned in that session, and you post it before you get on the plane, and then you meditate the whole plane ride, and you show up and you're present with your family. And this all becomes much more kind of seamless and automatic. Now, life is riddled with imperfections and it won't actually look like that. But the aspiration of that process and that flow, I think, is something worth aspiring to, thinking, selling, delivering all at once as you move through the day.
Then you trigger me to ask you this question, Chad, which is basically, what is the podcast about? But if we look at those three things, like selling, thinking, and delivering, what is your ratio today, of your time? Where you are in your business?
It ebbs and flows. Okay, so here's an example. I'll keep her nameless. A very beautiful human being reached out to me and asked and said, "Hey, I saw your session around the contribution method. It seems really complementary to this other thing that I use. Want to have a coffee chat to compare notes." Now, I might be getting 10 or 20 of those a week, and I want to actually say yes to every single one of them, genuinely. I would love to have coffee with every single person that reaches out, but my marriage would fail and I'd be a terrible dad. And so I have to say no. And so when you say, what's your ratio? My response to her in that moment was, this actually sounds really fun. And at some point, I think I would like to, when I'm in a heavy thinking space. Right now, I'm my brain is 95% hyper deep focused on launching the Connectors Summit and this new deck of future focused We Connect cards that I've created. And so got to decline. You're awesome. You're doing great work. See ya. Right. And so right now, my pie chart is probably heavier on the selling, launching focus, because the one main event that I host every December is happening and launching in a few weeks from now. After that happens, I'm going to put on an autoresponder that says, I'm probably never going to reply to this email. So if it's really important, get back to me. And I'm going to go think and write and read and play with my kids and completely disconnect from the world. And when I get back, I'll select every email in my inbox and I'll just click delete. And I'll trust that if it's important enough, it'll come back around. And this will actually happen at the end of December. And so in that mode, I'll shift a little bit more into thinking. That said, it still is maintaining the place of being that you're always in the place of thinking, selling, and delivering. So while the literal pie chart in a day might ebb and flow, I'm still, even as I'm launching, I'm actually thinking quite a lot. So I was grabbing lunch with my brother, talking about how we're going to frame this, pairing the cards with the summit launch. That's selling, but I'm also thinking deeply about the IP that I want to be sharing that will wind up going out onto YouTube in a form of delivery in that way, right? Is this useful or am I just talking?
No,
You
it's
okay?
it's awesome, and this is
All
why
right.
like you opened the business door, and I was like, I'm just gonna take it.
Yeah.
I love it, and this is why I don't know where I listened to that, but I heard that like for entrepreneurs, it really is about seasons. Like I know you're in
Hmm.
season of like building this. It's the second iteration, right? The Connect Summit, and then you have the new tech card coming, so it's mostly focused on promoting that and making sure that it has the success it deserves, and then resting, working on this thinking to be able to deliver something else. So yeah, that's awesome, Chad.
And you see this with every like elite play. I'm not a very big sports person, but every elite player in sports, they're not training 365 days a year for the most part. They might be doing something, but they're like very intentionally baking rest in. And so and even some of the greatest thinkers in the world, even like head religious figures, think about like Buddha and heads of movements, right? Buddha, Gandhi, Rosa Parks, Jesus, Muhammad, like these are people who have documented periods of disappearing for like extended periods of time to reflect, and then they come back and bring some sort of wisdom or value to their sphere or their society. And so I think on a very tiny version of that, I like to take a couple weeks off to reflect and then come back with a better YouTube video than I would have posted when I was kind of tired at the end of a launch and delivering a summit, right?
You making this link with those elite in different practices is like a lot of artists are a big stand-up comedy fan, and like you see those guys, they block some time in their calendar. No, I need to get bored. I need to live life so that I have things to tell about in my next show. Or so I love like the analogy you just made.
Because the risk is if they're not getting bored and living life, you become. There's a joke about this. I did a keynote for the National Speakers Association at their last conference, and there's kind of a joke around speakers that you'd never want to become an airport speaker or an airport storyteller, where all your stories in your keynote are about being in the airport on your way to a gig, and you like met somebody at the airport, and then your next story is about sitting next to somebody on a plane, and then your next thing is about like the restaurant that you ate at the airport. Your just life is speaking to people about flying through airports to speak to people, and it's like this weird, terrible loop that you really want to avoid at all costs.
So Chad, I could ask you a question like, I don't know if they are powerful, but I could ask you a question like for like 2 hours. But now I want to talk about this new discovery of yours. I think you just found out that you have a new power, like you can change the future for people.
Everybody can have this power. Yeah. No, so this was
the beauty of
okay. So when my co-founder Will died about 3 years ago, I met a guy named Mark Levy, whose claim to fame is he helped Simon Sinek find his why. So he was one of Simon Sinek's mentors, and Mark worked with Simon to actually develop the golden circle that went off and became this viral TED Talk and allows Simon to charge billions of dollars to show up on Zoom for 5 minutes, right?
But we don't want to ask why question, right?
Yes. Why? Yeah. So I met Mark, and Will was a big thinking partner for me. And so when we passed, there was a big gap in my life. And so I hired Mark to work with me for a year. And his thing is kind of helping people find their big, sexy idea. So what's the idea that you walk into a room full of grumpy people that already don't want to be there? What's the idea or the concept that you can share with them that is like, that's actually kind of interesting? And so it was kind of a laborious process of getting there. And it was a very windy path. He wasn't like, okay, Chad, boom, here it is. But in one of our chats, he asked me the question, just as a little connection before content. He asked me the question, Chad, what's something you'd like to do more of? And I didn't think anything of it. My answer was scuba diving. I hadn't gone scuba diving. I got young kids, just haven't made time for it. Didn't think anything of it until about 8 months later. I flew down early before a keynote, and I flew down just early enough to go on a dive hunting for fossils down in Florida. And I didn't make this connection until my head popped up out of the water. I said, holy smokes, if Mark didn't ask me this simple little question that started a very tiny little chat 8 months ago, I know there is a 0% chance that I would be diving right now. And so so in other words, the question that Mark asked was literally an edit button to my future. He did not know exactly how it would edit, but it materially changed what I did with my time and reprioritized something that's really important to me. And so Will had dyslexia, and we were talking with a group once, and he misspoke the subtitle of Ask Powerful Questions. The subtitle on paper is Create Conversations That Matter. Nice. He said it, as conversations that create matter. And I just wrote it off as his dyslexia a while back. But now I think about it and it's like, that's it, Will. If we're not having conversations that are actively editing the future, what the F are we doing, right? We need to change this conversation. Otherwise, we're just chatting for the sake of it. And so this is when I mentioned that, future-focused We Connect cards and this future-focused facilitation. For me, this is a framework and a model and a deck to specifically ensure that the types of sessions and programs you're leading with clients are just baked and weaved in with things that are materially and meaningfully editing what happens next for people. Because otherwise, I can guarantee you're not getting a call back either. You might have done something that was nice. It might have been fun. People might have laughed. But if it didn't transform something and edit what happens next, then your fee might not have been earned. There you go.
I love that. And you say, like, I say this sentence like that workshop don't fail in the room. They fail afterwards. Because people are not taking the action, because they are going back to normal life and it's tricky, and then they cannot implement the things they said they will. And with those, like asking those questions can help us more ensuring that things happen after the workshop. So I really love that. And I remember from our chat, like there's also studies backing this up, right?
Yeah, there's this whole like question behavior effect. And so there's like students walking across a college campus when they were just asked, what's your intent to donate blood? The chances that they literally veered off their path and went and donated blood went up by about 8.5%. My favorite one that I still actually can't compute it in my brain. There was a consumer study where they were studying car buying behavior, and they surveyed 40,000 people. And in one group, they asked, what is your intention to buy a car in the next 6 months? And people who were asked that question, the chances that they actually went out and bought a car in the next 6 months went up by 30+%, which is a lot. Like that doesn't mean
It's
like,
insane.
that's a lot. Yeah, it's totally insane. So this also, it gave a new meaning for me to like powerful questions. It's like, ooh, yikes. Like that's actually quite powerful. If now we have this edit button, the way we ask the question and the questions that we choose to ask and who we use to ask, I think we need to have the reverence that when we ask somebody, really think about a response, that it is actively changing what happens next for them. That's an awesome power. It makes you very valuable as a facilitator or a trainer or speaker, but it can also be misused, right? And for manipulative purposes as opposed to genuine and uplifting purposes. So really kind of tagging onto the whole land of appreciative inquiry and asking questions that allow people to uplift rather than kind of using questions to push and cajole people down a direction.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question to the audience, and now you're saying that, but please don't take this way. But I wanted to ask the facilitators that are listening to us is like, are you planning to go into the Connect Summit that Chad is organizing at the end of the year? And boom.
What are your intentions of coming to the Connector Summit? Wow, that is like application learning. I like talking about it in a learning context, like learning development, like reducing the distance between learning and transfer. The distance was like 4 seconds there, Mehdi. So good work. It was like you get A+. That's great. So let me share a real example, or that is a real example, but let me share a very useful example for people that my brother who works with me managing all the physical products of that company, he asked at the end of a team meeting, and when I say team, I intentionally keep a very small team. And so it was me, Kim, our chief of staff, Ben, and one other person. And we talked about a ton of stuff, and he just asked the question, what would you like to do in the next 15 minutes? And we all took 2-3 minutes to answer that question. And then we committed to each other to block the next 15 minutes to go and do it, which is such a different way to end a meeting than like, oh my gosh, I have this long list. I go into this thing, I go into another meeting. I can't do it. Like, so how would you like to spend the next 15 minutes is like really shortens the edit button down, as opposed to what something you want to do more of is a little bit more grand. What possibilities you see for yourself in the future is really grand. Right.
Oh, I love this, and I've heard this from, I don't know if you know Tim Leake. Actually, in his workshops, he's saying like most facilitators, they spend like 1 hour to make sure that people will take the action. So what he's doing is actually what you're saying applied in a workshop is like, okay, guys, now let's take the half an hour we have to actually start executing on the things we said we will. So I also think it's such a powerful tip. Chad, I want to finish the podcast on asking you what I believe is a powerful question. So if you could design a question that every facilitator asks to the team they are working with, what would it be?
This is maybe too close of a segue considering what we just talked about, but I would have to go with what is something you'd like to do more of. And here's why. When I've asked leaders, here's the question: what's something you'd like to do more of? Think of each of your individual team members or your direct reports. How many of them could you answer that question on their behalf? If the answer is 0, the extent to which they feel like you care about them is very limited, because if you don't know what your team is aspiring, and so one of my favorite stories, I met an owner of a bunch of pizza shops, and he had a 100% retention rate. Have you heard me share this story before? 100%. Yeah. So like pizza shop, food and beverage, like people churn, right? They're like, if you can hang on to somebody at a fast food place for 3 months, you're like, great, you got us through that season. Let's find somebody new. 100% retention rate minus any like really weird, health things or whatnot. And this is what he said. I asked him, how on earth did you maintain that? And he said, every single person that comes into the company is trained to just say something to the effect of, thank you for applying to work with us. We really need your help. And we recognize you're probably not going to work at this pizza shop forever. And so I want to start, before we talk about dough or flour or cash registers, I would just want to ask you, what do you want? Right? In the next 5 years, what do you want life to look like? What direction are you moving toward? Do you want to go to night school to be a certified tech in this? Do you want to go back to college? And if they don't have an answer, they say, that's fine if you don't have an answer, but just come back tomorrow with one. Go spend the day, choose an answer, and come back. Because at this pizza shop, what we like to do is be a stepping stone to just help you get there. So if you have night school on Wednesdays, we're all going to work our butts off to cover you so that you can go to night school and pursue your degree and hop to that next step that you want to. So very similarly, if I could design one question that I would offer everybody to add, like if every facilitator knows the answer of every audience member, what's something that you're aspiring to or you really want to do more of? This is like you then learn the currency of what people care about. And so you can frame your intentions for every exercise. You could say, hey, I know we blocked off until 5 p.m. today. I think if everybody gets really present and really focused right now, we can finish by 4:30. So-and-so can go golfing and so-and-so can go fishing and this person can do this and this. And all like the most personalized, beautiful intent is shared at that moment because you know what people care about. Bam.
Love it, Chad. I think we just finished the podcast with a banger. Okay, that's amazing, dude. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. There is the Connect Summit happening in December. Can you tell us the precise date, Chad?
Yeah, the Connector Summit is happening online December 10th to the 12th. And it'll be like highly participative. We have some sessions on Zoom, but we also use this other free roaming platform that's really quite delightful and a whole lot of creative magic. So yeah, go out. You can Google the Connector Summit or Chad Littlefield and you'll find what you need to. Although there was another guy named Chad Littlefield who was murdered. Don't click on him. I'm still alive.
And actually, it was the first result when I Googled you,
yeah.
And I was like, damn. And the result, I think, a golf player as well. There is a sport guy. I don't. Anyway.
Oh man, there's another guy. I don't know about that. Yeah, the Chad Littlefield who was actually shot was featured in like a high profile movie called The American Sniper. I shouldn't even say that because now I'm adding. If this gets transcribed, I'm just like adding more results for the other Chad Littlefield.
I will cut that. I will make sure that
I shouldn't laugh. It makes me sad when people die before they should. But yeah. I'll have to go find the golfer.
Okay, awesome, Chad. So we will put everything in the show notes so that you can make sure to be there. And Chad teased us about this contribution method. I also wanted to ask him more questions. So you said that it will be one of the topics that will be covered there. So many reasons to join that event. Thank you very much, Chad, for the discussion.
I should be cautious of this. For folks who are listening. Priya Parker, who's the author of The Art of Gathering, which I know a lot of facilitators fanboy and fangirl over. Her and I are doing a conversational keynote to kick off the summit as well, which I'm super psyched about. So reason number 55 to think about showing up.
That's really cool, man. But then the book is on every facilitator shelf, so definitely another reason to join. Where can people find you, Chad?
Our website is weand.me. Simple enough to remember, weand.me. But you also, just Google. I'm pretty easy to find on YouTube. You're like, if you're listening, you might be driving or something. You'll figure it out. People are smart.
You are. And when I say you are, not to you, Chad, I'm talking to the listener.
Oh, I know. I felt the
Facilitators.
whisper. It went right past me to the audience. Yeah, I got it.
I was like, no, I said enough good things about him. Like, now it's too much. This is the limit. Okay, man. I really appreciate it. It was a nice episode. Thank you very much. Take care and
Yeah,
keep
and the worst
doing what you
false
do.
end ever. Wait, I'm going to unend. This is going to be the longest unending podcast ever. I have a question for you.
No way.
You have people
You asking me a
listening. They're listening in part because they love and they're following their work, and you're expanding and starting this practice. What is something related to your work and your practice that you want to be doing more of?
I think teaching facilitation. So when you know, I just realized, and I have this kind of buddies. We have Feed for Facilitation. You've met Nati. She's one of them. Like, you've been on our podcast.
Yeah.
And we're looking at like the numbers we make when we sell those trainings, which, let's be honest, are really small amounts compared to what we are able to to gain when we're working with corporates. But still, when I close my eyes, of course, there are like some of workshop I really loved, but I really enjoy like sharing about my passion and teaching others and seeing them like running their first workshop, having this stress and having this chat with me to get them ready. So I think like, yeah, having this balance where I can still teach and of course like make a successful business by doing also the rest. But yeah, would be that. Thanks for the question.
So I just want to make very apparent something beautiful that just happened. By you answering that question, you just intertwined your future with every single person that's listening. And so now anybody who cares about Mehdi in the world has antenna that are looking, Mehdi sounds like he's now at this point, he's talked to a lot of facilitators. He's done a lot of facilitation. He's really well trained. Like, I kind of need a coach or a mentor or something. Like, I'm going to call Mehdi and see if he can, like, what he can teach me and how he works with folks. Like, and by sharing what is something you want to do more of, by sharing your answers to these questions, we intertwine our futures, and that is really beautiful. And now I won't say anything else. Goodbye.
You see what Chad did here? It's it just impacted my future and I guess yours. All right, guys. Now we are leaving. Hopefully you arrived.
No. One more goodbye. No, I'm just kidding.
They're in front of the garage. They're waiting for us to end, Chad.
You know who I'm going to go chat? I actually am not going to end yet. You know who I'm going to go chat with? I'm prepping right now. If you all know Carrie Price, have you met Carrie Price? You should have her on the podcast.
Like, she's based in Australia, right?
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
She runs the Facilitators Network, and she just ran the in-person Facilitators Festival of Learning or something. But I pick 1 to 2 kind of high-level facilitators every year who want to be mentored and work with them over the course of time. So I'm actually prepping to hop on a call with Carrie Price. So I don't know if you've had her on the podcast, but you should. She'd be a lovely person to chat with.
Oh, but thanks, man. I will definitely reach out. And you're not the first one to mention her, so I will.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chad.
Cheers. Goodbye for real. Maybe.